Maplewood Planning Commission to order on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021 at a little after 7. Roll call.
Fred down here.
Lou Yang present.
Cheryl Sokolsky here.
Sure, Desai here.
Paul
Mr.
Arbuckle
Chair-
present.
Thank you, Mr. Arbuckle. Chairperson Arbuckle, you are missing John Eads, which was expected, and then Commissioner Alan Iggy is not present at this time.
Do they have letters from the doctor?
We'll follow up.
Okay, the approval of the agenda. Any corrections or additions?
Move
No.
to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Deshar. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Fred. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Hearing all ayes, passed. Approval of the minutes, February 16th. Any corrections or additions? Anybody see anything?
Nope.
Okay, need a motion.
Move to approve it as presented.
There's been a motion by Deshar,
Second.
second by Lou. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Hearing all ayes. We are at the public hearing, number E, the North Fire Station conditional use permit at 1530 County Road C East. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair and Board, I've put up a slide deck where I'll walk through a handful of slides outlining the project. At the front end, I will say the applicant is represented tonight by Fire Chief Michael Mondor and members of the design team that is consulting the city on this project. So any questions after I get through these handful of slides can be directed to either staff or those directly related to working on this project. So with that, we're looking at 1530 County Road C East, which is on the intersection of County Road C and Hazelwood. We're looking at the southeast corner here. You can see this rectangle. It's the existing Hazelwood Fire Station. The city of Maplewood is proposing to tear the existing station down and rebuild a new, larger fire station at 35,000 square foot station. To move forward, the city council needs to approve a conditional use permit amendment and design review. Tonight, the Planning Commission is looking at the conditional use permit aspect. Last month, the Community Design Review Board did the review on the design and recommended approval. This is a overall site plan to the new proposed station. This was included in the plans that were sent to you along with your packet this month. But mainly the station here is focused on the west side of the station with apparatus bays here centered where they would load out onto County Road C. And then when they would return to the station, they would enter here from Hazelwood and then go right into the apparatus bays. There's some staff parking included on the south side of the apparatus bays, other emergency vehicle parking on the east side of the building, with office and living quarters also included in that east side of the building. There's additional parking for visitors and potential community events or meetings that would take place east of the building. And we have 2 retention ponds on either side of the parking lot. And then vegetation would be planted throughout the site. And I have an example of the landscape plan here in the slide after this. This is the elevations for the proposed building. And again, this is what the CDRB focused on at their meeting in February. So what you're looking at on the top half of this slide is what you would see from County Road C directly. And then the back side of that building is what you see on the bottom half. And again, the full building elevation set was included with your packet.
Yeah, might be better. Okay.
This is the example of, or not example, but this is the landscape plan sheet that is being proposed. So you can see there's a good number of trees that are needing to be taken down. If you've been out to the site or familiar with the site, you know the east half that is currently not developed of that site is heavily wooded. So a good number of those trees do come down. If you made it through the environmental report within your staff report, you will see that a lot of those trees are considered invasive, so they're not subject to the tree replacement requirements, but the city is being held to the tree replacement ordinance. So for trees that need to be replaced, there is that requirement to be following the ordinance there. So you see a good amount of vegetation along the south side of the site and then wrap it around, being sensitive to the fact that this fire station is in a residential neighborhood with single family homes to the south of it.
Is this the time to interrupt you here, Mike, or should I wait till the end?
That's up to you. If you if you have a question.
I do about the trees. I know they did the calibration calculations, and it ended up being $32,000 over for replacement. Is the city responsible for having to pay that since they're not replacing all those trees, or what's going to happen with that calculation with the trees?
Yep. Yeah. So there's a few different strategies that are outlined in the environmental report that essentially the fire chief working with staff can elect to. So we can work with the fire department on planting additional trees if possible on site. There's also some mitigation strategies in terms of removing buckthorn or other invasives on the site that they can get a credit for. So for any dollars that the city expends on removing invasives and having that management plan over the course of 3 years, that can count towards that $32,000. And then whatever is still needing to be paid can be paid into the tree fund. So that's something that staff, as we would with any developer, will continue to work on with the applicant to ensure that those ordinance requirements are met. You know, where we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves to the same requirements we would hold any other development project, and the tree replacement ordinance is a policy decision by the city council to ensure environmental impacts are mitigated. So we want to make sure that's being done so as well with a city project.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
This next slide here, this did not make it into your staff report, but it will make it into the city council report. We surveyed the 48 property owners within 500 feet of the site. We received 2 responses. One, as you can see on the bottom, was they were okay with the project itself. The top one had, and I talked directly with this homeowner, as did the fire chief, and so many of his issues have been addressed. So there was more issues concerning, or he had just had questions about grading, storm water retention, location of fence. There's an existing fence, and then where the fence is proposed to be. So many of these issues, I believe all of them have been resolved with the homeowner, but we still wanted to make sure to include it in the record of the letter being received by the city. We'd also notified these same property owners of the public hearing tonight. So if there's any additional comments that need to be received, but I just wanted to make sure that the planning commission was aware of these 2 letters that we did receive. Finally, again, I mentioned the planning commission. This group is holding the public hearing tonight. The city council will take up their review on this on their council meeting next Monday, March 22nd. That item is about the conditional use permit and design review. The council on separate items will deal with the funding of the project. So I just want to make sure, again, it's understood here at this group that approval of a conditional use permit doesn't approve the funding of the site or the project, that the council will consider that under a separate agenda item. With that said, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit amendment with the conditions outlined in your staff report, and staff can stand for any questions at this time.
So they've had that in the budget for over several years. I remember seeing that about the funding for the fire station. So I'm sure they've set some money aside in that too, and then also some bonding. Did they pay the bond yet off on the one on Clarence Street yet?
Chair and commission, you're already outside of my comfort zone. So
okay, sorry.
In terms of anything funding and bonding wise, that's not my focus here. So Mr. Chief Mondor might be able to provide a little more insight to that.
Okay, that was just kind of a personal question. I just kind of wanted to know. So
Sure.
So, Michael, I also saw in that neighbor's comments when I was looking at the large maps supplied to us, the landscaping and the grading was an issue. I don't know if it's you or one of the engineers who would maybe elaborate a little bit on it, because I kind of just thought that that grading and the elevations may contribute to the neighbor on the south side with some potential flooding type situations.
Sure, Chair and Commission. So there is a project engineer that works for SEH, the group that was hired to design this project. And Brian can speak to your question, but I do want to also make sure that it's known that our internal city engineering staff did review this project and made their analysis and requirements that they would on any development project. So it has been essentially independently reviewed from the project team, but I'll turn it over to Brian and SCH to address your question.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. Thank you to all of you for allowing me to come in and speak with you tonight. I do also have with me Steve Brow. Steve is the civil engineer. So Steve has actually developed the grading plan. So I'm probably going to let Steve talk a little bit more about it. Then he's going to be a little bit more knowledgeable than I am. So with that, Steve, I'll maybe turn it over to you to discuss some of the grading issues we may have going on.
Sure. So I guess what was the question in particular? Just how is
the angle of the grading, the slopes that are going, I wasn't very clear if everything is going to go into the retention ponds or is it going to also go towards the neighbor's house, as the neighbor has already mentioned that he's concerned, and there was that berm that I had noticed when I was out there. So it wasn't very clear to me as to how is that all going to pan out at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So all of the water from the entire paved areas, the building, essentially the whole site, with the exception of there's a berm we're building on the south side that's diverting the water from that whole area north of the property line into the retention basin. So to answer your question, all the water from the pavement goes to the ponds. All the water from the building goes to the ponds. It's about a 4-foot high berm on the south side that slopes down into the neighboring property. That is kind of the dividing line to keep the water in. So there's a little bit of water that'll hit that berm, but that's all grassed surface. So there shouldn't be any issue there. And these ponds are a significant improvement from the current design, where they're not discharging anything to the south, where the current site doesn't have a discharge point but to the south. So that is another improvement here.
But so things like when they are clearing the snow and stuff, is that all going into that retention pond? Because even the grade is such, even though it's a slight gradient towards the south owner's property, I kind of wonder about, is the water going to run off even from the snow as it melts into his yard, where it could go and flood his basement or anything like that?
No, so there is south of that parking lot, there's a ditch, if you will. Mm-hmm. So it goes off the edge of the pavement, it goes down into a ditch. That ditch goes to the basins, and all the snow will kind of accumulate in that ditch there, and as it melts, it'll go into that basin.
Okay. Thanks.
Chair and Commission, I just want to reiterate too, before any grading or building permits are issued, the city engineering staff reviews those permits even closer from a technical standpoint to make sure all stormwater retention requirements are being met. So just, again, that doesn't change anything that's happened with the discussion thus far. I just want to add that there's another layer of review that would happen after this point.
So, Michael, when you talked to that neighbor on the phone, was he fairly well satisfied with your explanations, or he is still waiting to see?
Yeah, Chair and Commission. So both myself and Chief Mondor talked to the neighbor, and I did walk through the grading plan, like pulled it out and talked with him on it and explained, some of it was just, reading, not reading the plan to him, but helping him understand how the plan works. And to me, he seemed at ease with what was occurring after knowing it better.
Thank you.
What is the elevation of the bottom of the retention pond?
One.
That'd be yours, Steve.
The bottom is the 911.85, so basically a 912.
So you're about 3 feet lower than the lowest elevation on the neighbors at 211.15.
Yep, I believe that is correct.
There's two of them also, and they're both at the same elevation.
Yeah, that is correct. They are both the same elevation, and they're connected to each other to function more or less as one large basin.
How come they didn't design the garage doors to be on when you're facing towards the building on the left or the east side, so it was further away from the intersection of Hazelwood?
Chair and Commission, I'd either ask Brian from SH or Chief Mondor if they, from an operational standpoint, what the thought was behind the building design.
Do you want to issue that? Do you know that one, Chief, or is that one for Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure I understand your question. You're wondering why we have them heading from the south to the north and not east-west?
No, why they're closer to the intersection of Hazelwood and not more to the east, why you would have them more closer to the intersection, the openings of the doors. Reverse the building, I guess, would be the question.
I think it's the contour of the site.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we've had the site configured multiple different ways and looked at different options of how we can accommodate for the turn radius of the apparatus, and also account for the apparatus to be able to be parked out front briefly for truck checks in the morning. And essentially we are running up against that south end and needed enough space to be able, with our turn radiuses of our larger apparatus, to be able to pull around and back. And if we were to situate it differently, east-west or otherwise, then we're creating multiple turns for apparatus to have to get out and respond, which adds to our response times.
Right. Makes sense. Yep.
The east end is quite a bit higher too. So
Well, the ground will eventually be flat when they're done.
I did have a question, just going back to the comments as well around the increase in number of calls, and will that be within the ordinances today, or is that also require changes to any noise ordinances, just considering the increase in operations for the site?
Chair and Commission, so I'll kind of start there, and I'd ask Chief Mondor to elaborate just in terms of, maybe it might be helpful to take a step back so everyone's clear on what's happening. So, there's two stations currently, Gladstone and Hazelwood, that are essentially being folded into one station. So yes, there will be more service calls. From a city ordinance standpoint, there are no changes because essentially emergency vehicles are not going to be subject to those same type of noise ordinances. And Chief Mondor can talk more about what they're required to and what neighborhood expectations could and should be in terms of sirens and both from a light and noise standpoint.
But they will be closing the Gladstone station.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So this project stems back several years, going back to 2016. We had a fire EMS work group that now Councilmember Knutson sat on. Part of that was to conduct an operational review and fire station location GIS analysis. That study found that our current model is over 99% redundant based on the 8-minute travel time requirement that was adopted by the city council. And so this move reduces our capital footprint and allows us to perform within that metric. So we have studied that for several years. And this was the recommendations from that report, and are finally starting to move this plan into action. One of our first steps was kind of transition to our full-time staffing model, which increases our amount of staff available to respond to emergency incidents. The other piece, I had a very productive conversation with the resident directly to the south of the property. We walked through some of the water retention concerns. I believe that historically that property, I'm talking decades ago, that property experienced some excess water that was possibly coming from the North Fire Station site. So that's where part of that concern arose from. And as Mr. Martin and Steve had mentioned, we believe that we're improving the water retention and drainage off the site. As it relates to emergency vehicle operations, we do have certain statutory requirements that we have to abide by. Per Minnesota state statute, if we have our lights on, we are supposed to have our sirens activated. And so there will be an increased call volume, but we do have a respectful application of the statute to try to be respectful of the neighbors. We have different layers of sirens. There's the kind of the federal, which is the very loud, obnoxious siren. We do not ask our staff to be stepping on that at 3 a.m. as they're responding to emergency incidents, but we ask them to follow the statute. And so I promised the resident that we want to, he said that we are excellent neighbors. We want to live up to that reputation. And that if the sirens ever become a nuisance to him or any other residents in the community, I ask that they reach out and we talk about what strategies we can put into place that are, still aligning with our statutory requirements.
So how many calls do you get from this existing location now?
2,356 is the average over the past 3 years.
Okay, what will it go to?
4856 is the anticipated average. And that's an aggressive average because I do believe that with the reconfiguration, excuse me, my energy saving lights, I apologize. With the reconfiguration of the stations, there will be some boundary weight variance that we're going to need to apply, but I took that was an aggressive estimate so that we didn't try to undershoot what the anticipated impact are. All of our responses are based on GIS, and the closest unit responds to all emergencies. So we have to rely on some estimates to come up with that number, but I think it will be lower over time with pulling the other station.
So that's about 10 a day then on the average.
Yes, sir.
Cheryl, did you get all your questions answered on that then?
At 7 more per day with the new station than it was before.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief, do we have fire stations that are existing with community rooms and things like that for people to rent out space and things like that?
Mr. Yang, so the Gladstone station had a community room, and that has pretty much been sacrificed with moving staff around and accommodating for staff that are at the existing station. So that has served purposes such as voting and scouts or other community meetings. I know there's the planning, or Michael Martin has had several community meetings for different projects in the area over the years. And so when we designed this structure, we were intentional about trying to make sure that the spaces that we were creating were available for multiple uses. And so we have a dire need to increase our capacity to have an emergency operations center, which was highlighted probably over the past year more than ever. So this space will accommodate that. It will also accommodate staff training and joint training with neighboring jurisdictions. And it will also serve as a community gathering space when COVID allows us to gather again in person. We do have a training space that's not as big at the East Metro Training Facility that accommodates approximately 30 people. But everything that we put in the office space, we wanted to be thoughtful about how we were going to make sure that it had multiple uses. I can't justify a standalone EOC or a standalone training room, etc. But when you bundle the uses that the space is going to be used for, I can stand in front of commissions and city council and say that I think that's a wise use of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I only really asked because that seems like a pretty big parking lot with a lot of spaces and things like that. So if the intent is to use it beyond just what the normal fire station usage is, then that makes sense with the size of the parking lot. So.
Thank you.
Chair and Commissioner, I just want to kind of add to that too. And Chief Mondor mentioned we've had several planning meetings at the Gladstone Station. Ramsey County has held many meetings related to the rush line planning. So, selfishly, when I saw the plans that come in, that's kind of the first thing I looked for, because that's a meeting space we value on the community development side, because we don't have a similar venue in like City Hall to kind of have a little more informal, relaxed meeting space. So having that replicated at this station is something that I think will be put to good use over the years by other entities besides the fire department.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit late, but I have a question. We all know that in that area, there is going to be increased density, both commercial and residential. Does this consolidation has taken that into consideration?
Chair and Commission, Mr. Iggy, do you mean in terms of why this site was selected for consolidation, or just the neighborhood handling it?
No, the site for the consolidation. Because that there's going to be increased density, at least within the existing mall. All kinds of stuff are coming up over there, as well as new developments in that area. So I'm just wondering if this consolidation will address those issues, are taken into consideration.
Sure, Chair and Commission, again, Chief Mondor can expand, but so yeah, looking at the two sites when consolidating and picking one essentially of which one, I think from a land use pattern density standpoint, and I'm guessing, again, Chief Mondor can correct me, proximity to the South Station really largely determined why this site prevailed, but Chief Mondor can provide more context than I can.
Well, there are some lots for vehicles.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't hear your comment.
There are 7 bays there for emergency vehicles. So
Yeah, has that taken into consideration? I mean, I'm talking about future development in that area. Definitely, I mean, several plans have been approved or in process for increased density in that area, both commercial and residential. So I'm just wondering if this consolidation will increase or defeat the response time of the apparatus.
Board and Chair, Mr. Chair, in 2017, the GIS analysis that was conducted by Fitch and Associates did account for several variations in our response model. And so the only thing that their response methodology, they don't essentially guarantee against, is if they were to cut off major road networks. So a big part of the response time analysis relates to our access to roadways, and not necessarily traffic density. But when we look at call volume, the north side of the city is by far the busiest. And as we add more density there, we're going to continue to see increases in call volume, which is part of the recommendation to have a further concentration of resources. And so when they put together their station recommendations, we looked at what does it look. If I was a betting man, I would have said our current Gladstone station would have been the place, and the data analysis did not suggest that. It suggested that we move up there, and absent them, cutting off County Road 61, cutting off White Bear, or access to County Road C, McKnight, etc., which I would hope I would fight tooth and nail against. So barring those types of things, it does account for increased density. But road networks would be the major impact that could flaw. If there were changes to that could challenge the plan.
Oh, definitely the plan will be challenged, or this proposed building will be challenged, because you are talking about 2016 GIS report now. A lot of things has happened. There has been plans, modification, density increase, and all kinds of stuff that are being approved that will be coming up. So that is why I'm saying that, yes, you have additional stores over there from to 7, but what will be the response time to all those locations or the new locations? That is what I'm asking.
Chair and Commissioner, I can just add to, so the study was done to help select the site, and then, that's what you're reviewing tonight. What we do on the planning community development side and work with you, the Planning Commission, is our comprehensive plan, and that lays out our expectations for growth over the next 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. We do include public safety in that review, so that's both fire and the police departments, and so that they know what the city is doing and what direction we're going towards. In addition to like the North End plan, which I think you're referring to, Alan, or at least that part of the city, and then we have Rice Lavender. So on the west side, and my illustrative point there is that all these planning studies, we are very diligent to make sure that all areas of the city, staff, departments are included in review of those projects, so that they know what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And so when we have a apartment complex proposed in the North End, no one is taken by surprise, and that we're all moving in that same direction in terms of facility planning on the city side that's working in tandem with our land use planning.
And Board and Chair, I would also add that the placement of the stations is one factor that goes into this, and it does account for the travel time and road time. But as density and calls increase, we have another piece of staffing that we would have to consider as we see those call volumes jump. But the response time metric of 8 minutes or less 90% of the time is going to remain consistent. It's actually going to improve, because right now we kind of slingshot resources to different parts in the city, which adds time versus having them concentrated in the most demanding areas in the community.
Yeah, we can only anticipate anyway at this point, but not until it becomes reality. Then I hope the city will respond to that at that time.
I think it's a good location. I think it'll work well.
Why? Because it's close to you?
Yes, perfect.
We're
2 minutes from my house. Moving away from your house. Why? A question I other had is, why, when they build commercial buildings like that, why do they never make them slope roofs? Because the flat roofs are so much more expensive and harder to maintain that they don't put a pitched roof on buildings like this. I know it's kind of a stupid question, but
I don't think there's an architect here tonight, so I've always thought that it should be a sloped roof.
so
Fortunately, I do think we have the ability to answer that question, so I'll turn that to Brian.
Yes, that is a good question. There are a few reasons for it. Primarily, one of them is appearance. Generally speaking, commercial buildings have a look. A lot of times they're flatter roofs. The main reason, though, is because of the span and the loads that we face when we have these large spans. So we have an apparatus bay that's 80 feet wide, and we don't, we want to minimize columns. We want to minimize, any type of interference that would be in the way for those large spans. which generally lends itself to construction materials like steel and concrete, which generally, we try to, they tend to be more efficient if we can keep them flat versus adding material and making them pitch. When you make them pitch, the depth of them becomes very large. If you think of a wooden truss, it can be 10, 12, 14 feet deep versus a steel flat truss where, we may only be 5 feet deep. So some of it is efficiency, some of it is structural requirements, and some of it is appearance as well.
In the long run, it is better. I have to talk about it.
So what is the lifespan of a station?
Board and chair, we hope to get 40 to 50 years out of this station. That's based on some of our conversations with our architects, construction managers. There's modest build into the future with this station. What we've faced in the Maplewood Fire Department over the past 20 years is we've gone from an all-volunteer department, and all of our facilities were built for volunteer firefighters who did not live in the station 24 hours a day, to an all-career department where we house, today we house 9 to 10 firefighters 24 hours a day. And we have some built into the future up at that station. So we are optimistic that we'll get 40 to 50 years out of the station as long as we maintain it appropriately, which we will.
And go to concrete parking lots like that.
So part of the idea for the flat roof is that the flat roof is a kind of solar ready.
Could be. I don't know.
Solar could certainly be incorporated into the design. It's not something we've had a lot of discussion about, but it certainly could be incorporated into a flat roof in the future.
If you want to go environmental, why don't they make that retention place tanks that hold water, and they could pump the water into the fire trucks and not have to use tap water, right?
I will, Chair and Board, or Chair and Commission, I will say on the environmental side, because it is a city project, it is subject to the Green Building Code. So there are certain steps that the city does have to take that other development projects that wouldn't necessarily have to unless they opted into. So just know that from a bigger picture point of view as well, is that the city is being held accountable to build a better product environmentally.
Right.
Cool.
One of the comments that came back from the CDRB board member was that it didn't match the new South fire station. Was there any explanation with that?
Chief Mondor, I believe you could handle that one.
Yeah, board and chair. The South Fire Station, it's a nice looking station. We had conversations about the early design phase that we wanted to go with a more modern looking fire station to be more representative of what we're trying to accomplish organizationally. We've tried to modernize the Maplewood Fire Department specifically over the past 3 years. We've made several strides to do so. And staff and the architectural design, as we bounced back and forth at different ideas, thought that the more modern look was more fitting with where we are organizationally today.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Good.
Because we can let's open up to the public then. You ready for that, Michael?
Yes, Chair and Commission. So in terms of the public hearing, we do not at this time have any callers awaiting to speak.
Okay. So we'll give them 5 seconds.
So yeah, if you want to open in and give whatever time you feel is appropriate, and then you can move forward.
Okay. We'll give you another couple more seconds if anybody wanted to call in yet. Any comments or questions? Seeing none? Okay, we'll close the public hearing then at this point. Thank you. Any other discussions? Somebody like to make a motion? You usually go to that Desire. Did you want to?
Yep, it'll be a motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit for a new fire station building at 1530 County Road C East.
Second.
There's been a motion by DeSar, second by Lou. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing all ayes. It's passed. This is just our recommendation. This will go before the city next Monday on the 22nd. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief and Brian.
Thank you, Board and Chair. I appreciate it.
And I think there was one other guy there too. I don't see his name though. So thanks all. Okay, we are on new business.
Chair and Commission, at the last meeting in February, we looked at the proposed Planning Commission 2020 annual report. I sent you that language that we looked at last month yesterday in an email. I can put it on the screen here too if that's helpful for anyone. But what I'm looking for or requesting from the Planning Commission is a formal recommendation to approve the annual report so we can forward that on to the City Council. And we are looking to present the Planning Commission annual report along with the entire Community Development annual report at their meeting on April 12th. Historically, we've had the chairpersons from each group there, so I'd ask for Chairperson Arbuckle if he could attend on April 12th, and we'd get you more information or details on that as we approach that. But again, just looking for the Planning Commission to consider approval of the annual report.
Problem I seen with it though is it's confusing on your writing. First it says Fred's name, and then it says starting from the center clockwise, and it says my name, and it goes, so it should be, I think it should say on the writing there, it should start out with, you know, from clockwise all the way around or counterclockwise, starting with that, then, you know, and then I think it'd be nice too if the titles were on there too. You know, I want to be referred to as the king, you know, because
King Paul the first.
Yeah.
Chair and Commission, we can definitely put, you know, the officers' recognition on that. In terms of identification, I use what I think is kind of standard in terms of identifying and how you go through, but we can take another look to make sure that's clear and concise.
Well, because if you look at it, it says Fred's name and then it says counterclockwise around. It's just kind of confusing there that the name comes before the direction.
Sure.
Maybe
Okay.
I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid.
We can take a look at that.
So, but other than that, I'm fine with it. We just need a motion then, right? Fred making a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the annual report.
And
Second.
I thought I heard Cheryl in there say second.
Okay.
Did you want to second that, Cheryl? Get your name on there?
Yep, I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Fred, second by Cheryl. All those in favor?
Aye.
There, Alan. All those all ayes?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hear your name. Okay.
Thank you, Commission.
Okay. That's passed.
Michael, when I'm looking at that picture, what Paul is confused about, I'm not quite sure it's confusing. I interpreted that the first box is not having any person there, so it starts with Fred and goes clockwise, and Paul is next. So looks correct to me.
You're smarter than me, though.
No, we'll take a look. I mean, truth be told, I kind of agree with Tushar, but I'll take another look just to make sure we're identifying in the most clear fashion. But yeah, I appreciate the comments.
Sure. We are at unfinished business. That was the new business. We already did that, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we did not have any new business tonight.
So visitors presentation, we don't have nobody.
No callers.
Commissioners presentations, staff presentations.
I have nothing further for you tonight, Chair and Commission.
I did have a question for you, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, is anything going on with the the nursing home thing there in the fields there at Harvest Fields. You know, they have
If you're referring to the senior housing project to the west of the fire station site?
right.
Yep, their building permit is in with the city, so I'd expect a start later this spring.
Okay.
Michael, what about that fast food joint, something Cane? Is that still on or that's gone?
Yeah, Raising Cane's, that's replacing where Wedding Day Jewelers has been near the east of the Maplewood Mall. So I know their demolition permit was approved, and they're expected to start later this spring as well, early summer. So yes, that project's moving forward.
Because I was just curious more along the line that the Chick-fil-A is already causing traffic issues over there, and with that Raising Cane right next to them, people standing in line to get takeout is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, no, and fortunately, I mean, they do dump out. They both dump out, not dump, but load out onto the ring road of the mall. But there's enough separation there where, and it's a long way to get to, relatively long way to get to the Raising Cane site. It's a flag lot essentially that connects to the ring road. So there's lots of stacking available, both egress or to get in and out. So from a traffic standpoint, there wasn't any concerns, and it's definitely not going to impact public roads because that ring road is a private road. But we do look at traffic flow even on the private side. So.
Yeah, because right now it's already difficult for people to get into those other stores in the front there because of the Chick-fil-A line already blocking it, and it's a one-way traffic around there, those small shops. So
understood, sure.
The hotel's ready to go too, isn't it? By the furniture store.
Can't hear you,
sorry.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
The hotel up on B is ready to go too, isn't it?
That was approved. They do not have a building permit in at this time, but that doesn't mean it's not moving forward. They've given every indication that they intend to move forward, but it's not a start is not imminent at this point.
Okay. Yeah. And then the Moose Lodge, they get okay on their plans.
Yep, they were approved by the city council, so they're free to move forward. There's no permits or anything in at this time, so I can't comment on when we think they'll start moving or be in place, but they have everything they need from the city at this point to keep moving forward.
Okay.
All right.
We're done.
We're done?
We're done.
We're all done? Okay.
Hey.
All right, guys, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. We'll see you next month.
Okay.
Thanks.